So I started reading Dragon Keeper kind of towards the end of summer, and I had to take a break from it to read a couple of arcs that I had received so I could read those before they came out. And then I took the time to read another hefty magic school fantasy book, Arcana Academy, and then got back to this one. Dragon Keeper is the first book in the Rain Wild Chronicles. So this is the fourth series in the realm of the Elderlings. And when I started it, I did not like it as much as the first three trilogies. After taking a break from it and coming back to it, I liked what I came back to more than what I started with, and I think that's mostly due to the fact that so much of this book felt like setup. We have pretty much all new characters in this one. Anyone you've met before is like a background character and isn't about them. And so much time was spent setting up the two main characters, Alice and Thymara, and a couple of other more minor characters, that it just felt like it took forever to get going. I thought I was starting a book that was about a journey with dragons, and the journey with the dragons doesn't start until pretty close to the end. So when I took my break to go read other books and come back, I was pretty much at the start of their journey. So I got to come back and feel almost like I was picking up the next book in the series where, all right, all the setup has been done, now let's go. I will say something that the Tawny Man trilogy did not give us that the two trilogies before it did was a character to latch onto to hate. I just didn't really strongly hate any particular person in the Tawny Man trilogy. And so this one does give us that. And it's almost like two characters that we get. One that you get to start hating more early on because it's more obvious what a terrible person he is. And then the other one we start to hate more as we go because it seems like at first you're supposed to like him. So as I talk about this book, this is going to be less of a review and more just stuff that I thought about it. So I'm giving a spoiler warning. I feel like this series is old enough by now that should be fine. I'll try not to spoil any big major things, but there really wasn't any big major stuff that happened because it felt like so much setup for the books that are going to come after it. The character that at first I thought was going to be the let's hate this character was Hest, Alice's husband, the rich trader who marries her because they can just be like married in name and she can provide an heir for him and he can provide the money that she can use to study dragons and pursue her scholarly interests. And so you go into that marriage thinking, well, this is not going to be a happy thing, and it's not. No surprises there. And it's hard not to feel bad for Alice because even though she knows what kind of marriage she's getting herself into, she still has this little hope that maybe her husband will fall in love with her. Maybe as they get to know each other. What we don't know until later is that long before Alice gets involved and long before they get married, Hest is already in a relationship with somebody else. Which, towards the beginning, when you start to get those hints of who Hest is in a relationship with, I thought maybe I was guessing who it was. But then I thought, no, I don't think it's gonna go that direction. And then, spoiler, so this might be the point where you decide whether spoilers are going to be too much or not. Through the book, we get more and more hints that Hest and Cedric might be closer than we think they are at first, seeing only from Alice's perspective. And then the more we see from Cedric's point of view chapters, the more we're like, oh, Cedric is the other woman, as Alice thinks there's an other woman. And possibly the only reason she doesn't suspect that it's Cedric is because she doesn't suspect that her husband is not even interested in women in the first place. She just thinks that Hest is not interested in her personally. So then I started really hating Cedric because he's all pretending to be Alice's friend. And it even gets to the point where he is rebuking her and getting on to her for the way she's behaving with Captain Leftrin when he is doing far worse with Alice's husband. And Cedric even says he's pretty sure Alice would never cheat or do anything to give Hest a bad name on purpose, maybe with appearances on accident, whereas Cedric already has been the whole time. And here's where Hobb does a really good job with manipulating our emotions is, why do I even like her? She sets us up at first to feel like Cedric is a sympathetic character. We're supposed to like him. Even though Hest is mean to Alice, Cedric is still Alice's friend. And so we're supposed to kind of be on his side. Like, yeah, he likes his city comforts and he doesn't really like having to rough it and be on a boat or whatever. But that's a normal thing. That doesn't make him a bad person. He's still Alice's friend and still supporting her, supposedly. So then through all the like clues that the person Hest is cheating with is probably Cedric, and then it's just confirmed, then it feels more like a betrayal. Because Cedric was supposed to be this good person and this friend who's going with Alice to help keep her safe and to maintain her reputation. So, finally back to getting characters to hate. I almost think it's more important to have a good, hateable character when the main characters are not necessarily super likable. So if you have something that's wrong with a main character and you can't necessarily root for that main character a whole bunch, you need somebody to root against them. So not saying that Alice is terrible or whatever, but I don't know that she's necessarily very likable either. I'm not like fully on her side against anyone, except maybe Hest and Cedric now. And then Thymara, this very, very young character, just kind of gets thrown into this situation with other young people with not much guidance, and they're having to figure it out and fight it out amongst themselves. And as far as like the characters to hate, I don't feel like Greft is that yet. But I feel like he's getting set up to be somebody for us to really turn strongly against. We're getting glimpses of how he wants to be manipulative and controlling, and how he will turn truth and facts to suit his own narrative to get more people on his side, how he can be charismatic and likable when he chooses to be, and controlling at other times. And you know he doesn't have Thymara's best intentions at heart. You know he's just trying to gain another follower from her. And so at this point, I feel like Greft is just a not likable character. And then as we get to further books, he'll become that more hateable character. That's a prediction. I also feel kind of like Alice in the, I was so excited to get to the dragon book, and now the dragons are not good and not healthy, and it's not how we thought it was going to be. The whole journey of the serpents through the Live Traders trilogy, it made it feel like such a success. The serpents finally made it up the river to where they finally get to transform into dragons. It was like this huge emotional homecoming thing, and then that all is just blasted. And then the one dragon who stayed for them has now left. And if you've read the Tawny Man trilogy, you know where Tintaglia is, you know what she's off doing, you know that she has found another dragon to consort with, and she doesn't need these sickly, deformed dragons. And you're kind of mad at her, but also you understand how dragons are because we've been in their brains a little bit now. And knowing how Hobb writes and how she writes animals, I think our heartstrings are going to be pulled more for the dragons. The dragons are now trying to travel to get to the place where they will consider their home and their safe place. I have a feeling they're not all going to make it there. It's going to feel like the dragons are trying to get to where they can finally rest and live as dragons, and it's going to be really hard for them somehow along the way. I kind of hope we run into the Fool somewhere. I don't know how he would get all that ways. Maybe up from the other side of the mountains where they came down the last time. The way the dragons put a glamour on humans feels a lot like wit magic, except dragons are far more intelligent than any other creatures, so they can use it against humans. And I'm not sure if it's possible yet to create a wit bond between a human and a dragon. I think maybe that's kind of the idea of how the Elderlings and dragons bonded, but the dragons being so self-centered and so full of themselves, they won't fully let themselves into a bond with a human. They'll kind of hold themselves aloof and let the human bond with them while remaining kind of above that bond. And then this one just kind of ends unfinished. It doesn't have a definitive, and here was the story arc for the first book of the 4. It felt more like, here's all the setup for the story that Hobb actually wanted to tell. And then the real story, if you will actually start in the next one. Which, I don't know when I'm going to read it. I'm enjoying my journey through the realm of the Elderlings, but I have some other things I want to read first. So, I don't know. I'm not in a rush. They'll still be on my shelf when I feel ready. If you've thought about starting your own Realm of the Elderlings book journey, it's never too late. It's one of those series where all the books are out, so if you're a really fast reader, they're all available already. I will link this book and Robin Hobb's website. I'll link my Patreon. Thank you, patrons. I appreciate you guys a lot. And I'll link my Instagram. And happy reading. Bye.